Hey, team players, and welcome back. Can you believe that tomorrow is going to be the first round of the NFL draft? And with tonight, we're going to be showing literally our best takes, all of it, for our last chance. We only got a couple of hours left down to make money on the DraftKings Mega Millions pre-draft. And quite frankly, this is the moment that hit hot, guys, because there's over 20,000 seats that need to be filled. They aren't going to fill it. You're going to have one of your best starting spots in terms of percentage of winning versus what the payouts should be. It's going to be an absolute great situation. If you guys want to jump in with us, this is the $10 million on DraftKings. Feel free to jump with us. We're going to be firing it up right now, and Bob will be joining us here momentarily. But let's start this draft up on the other side of the intro. So yes, indeed, team players, there are 7 people in this one right now waiting for a couple more to jump in here. And we're going to be, like I said, doing the draft here on DraftKings. You guys can see the entry point if you want to jump in and draft with us. The only thing that we ask, if you're going to be drafting with us here today, you just tell us who you are and we'll do what we can to make the best things possible for everyone. That's what we're all about here. The best information, the best takes, and the best information. And you can see right there, this baby just filled up and we are excited to do it. Oh, yeah. So that being said, spot are we going to be in here, guys? Picking 10th. Absolutely love it. Love it, love it, love it. Let's get you guys the full screen and all this. So, as always, guys, we are sending your questions, team players. You guys already know this. If this is your first time here, welcome to Local Football Flavor, where we are all about giving the best results and giving answers to make people money. That's what we do today, obviously being the best ball season. Some people send in their dynasties from here and there, and that's all good too. So welcome to the party. So excited for this. Let's put the draft board up big and all for you. The 10th spot is one of these spots that Bob and I have been talking about, which is pretty much the best spot to draft from. We really think that the top of the draft it's got issues. I mean, there's just no way around it. If you have to start the build with the Jamar Chase lock-in for a best ball stack, it gets very, very difficult. When you're here on the back, there's a lot of flexibility. And you guys have seen us over the last couple of weeks giving different answers in terms of what are the best builds. We've tested quarterback early, tight end early, backfilling tight ends, backfilling quarterbacks. And the best part of doing that is that you were able to see some consistent things that were universal in the draft. Some things that people have been getting wrong, in my opinion, since the beginning of this draft process. And to me, that is predominantly the running backs. Henderson, the rookie from Ohio State, I thoroughly believed we drafted no later than 40th overall, which means he will be used as an absolute stud. And I'm getting him in the 5th round right now. A guy that come August will be in the 2nd round. And there's all kinds of other landmines that people keep picking up. Kyron Williams comes to mind. That it's not guaranteed they're losing their job, but it's a reality. And I don't want to be on that bus of that happening. So when we look at that consistency that we've learned through the draft to this point, what I've really found is relying on either Omari and Hampton to be there has been getting sketchy. But picking up a quality running back in the 1st or 2nd round, doing receivers the rest of the way, and then lining up your quarterbacks has really been the best result. So some of the quarterbacks that are really easy to line up in that regards are Dak, Stafford, and Stroud. All 3 of which are guys that I absolutely love. I think Stroud and Dak have a chance of absolutely being home runs. And we've seen Hall of Fame quarterbacks in their last year really blow up some all numbers. One receiver correspondingly with either CD, Puka, or Collins is what I'm looking for to start this baby off. And we're going to see how this draft board consists to make it happen. So, the first 5 picks, first 6 picks are who they are, and people are just basically fighting the order of when they go. So this is almost certainly going to be Gibbs. And now we're back here into this receiver roulette. Some of the receivers you've seen Bob and I actively avoid is Thomas Jr. And it's not necessarily a fact that Thomas Jr. is a bad player because Brian Thomas Jr. is great. It's we don't have faith in Lawrence anymore. Thomas's Jr. Best numbers came up when Lawrence was out. Granted, it's also when Thomas had enough time to prove to the coaches to give him the ball. So it's a little bit of a misnomer to say that if Thomas isn't there, you're not going to be able to get results unless it's with Lawrence. So when you look at it and say, I think Thomas could be great regardless, but if he's not there, it's a concern. So that's exactly the start I didn't want to have happen when we see Collins going early, Puka going before me. I didn't think I was getting Dak. So next best up for me is going to be Amah. And then if I get Genty on the comeback, it would make life amazing. And that would be how I want to start it. If I don't get Genty, I'm probably going to go with either McCaffrey or JT. One of the things that I've liked late, and Bob can attest to this, is combining JT and Richardson, knowing that Indianapolis has done everything they could to fix their offensive line. Otherwise, I'm going to take Genty, and welcome to the party, Bob.
What's happening? What is going on? I mean, I will say, though, that I am not a fan.
What's going on? I just gave a 6-minute monologue, and I need someone else to talk for a minute.
I have to say, though, I am not a fan of I'm not a fan of the JT Richardson combination for just a couple of reasons. I understand the value because, Richardson was not truly negatively affecting Taylor's output, which I think is good to understand and good to know. But what I do feel is that I do feel like it is an unnecessary combination. So when we talk about combinations and when we talk about stacks that are going to provide with a decent amount of points, I do think that the idea of going out there right now as it stands, a day before the NFL draft, knowing the information that the Colts are putting out there, and just in terms of like what their signings this offseason were, like if there was an extreme amount of confidence in Anthony Richardson playing the whole season, I could understand why, that they wouldn't go out there and sign like a super veteran backup, but they went out, got Daniel Jones. And I'm not fully certain that they're absolutely sold on the idea of Anthony Richardson, but I do understand that they're probably sold on the fact that they don't want their investment to do poorly another year. So, lighting a fire under him does make sense. But from a strictly football standpoint, I'm really not sure if Anthony Richardson is going to continue to be or will ever be a productive fantasy quarterback consistently. And so from that point, like there is a real conversation you can have that prior to the beginning of the season that he won't have a job week 1. Maybe he gets that job back week 6 because Daniel Jones performs poorly, but it's just not a situation. And for that reason, I do think that that's why we're seeing a lot of these Indianapolis wide receivers getting pushed further and further down the board, to be quite honest with you, because the situation is scary. And it's the same kind of situation that the Steelers are in right now from a different perspective. From a fantasy perspective, you think about it. DK has the capacity to be a wide receiver that you would want to draft in the 3rd round. George Pickens has the capacity to be a wide receiver that you want to draft in the 4th round. However, because the quarterback situation is uncertain and we don't know, there's been a lot of smoke screens out there about, George Pickens potentially being traded. So, you look at it and you say, well, the value of not having a firm quarterback in place is really negatively impacting some of these potential targets. And you're getting a value on some guys for sure, like DK and George Pickens. You're getting a good value on those guys. For guys like Josh Downs and Pittman, it really does depend on what quarterback is throwing them the ball, because with Anthony Richardson, it's going to be fairly low volume. With Daniel Jones, it's going to be a decently higher volume. So, how you value what quarterback is going to start, I think gives you kind of a heads up in the game. If you're thinking of moving in the direction of drafting anybody from Indianapolis outside of Jonathan Taylor, I think Jonathan Taylor is perfectly fine on his own. I mean,
I agree with that.
As we get to the next pick here, with the draft coming up beyond us, I'm not sure I want to go with 2 rookies, but I mean, Agenti Omarion Hampton wouldn't be terrible.
This picks him with Garrett Wilson. He was on the board, Bob. There's no
Garrett
doubt.
Wilson will be a great pick here in the 3rd round.
I have been really loving the Garrett Wilson field stacks.
That's a nice stack.
I've said from the beginning, we said this even when we were drafting before free agency. I think Fields has the chance of being a top 5 fantasy quarterback because he runs. Then he's with the Jets, who can't block. I think Fields absolutely could be not necessarily a good fantasy player or a good real life player, but I think he could be a fantasy god. And if I can know I'm building that stack now, I love it. So that's why I love that there. And Bob, for my 3rd receiver, someone I absolutely have not drafted at all, but I'd be willing to because you've talked to me about him 2 months now. DJ Moore is on the board. I will take him.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say enough. I just noticed our heading says Underdog. I hope you explained that we're actually on DraftKings, but
we got to fix that. My bad. We're on DraftKings, guys.
Let me put it in the thing here. What I noticed, specifically about guys that people are kind of sleeping on, and that we can't fix it right now, but one of the things that people are really sleeping on is volume and projected volume. So I just kind of want to make this clearer because it really affects the value of certain candidates that you're going to be drafting in your draft. So, for example, we look at a guy like AJ Brown. For us last year, AJ Brown was a 1st round guy, and that assessment wasn't incorrect. Had everything lined up the way it should have.
Well, just had he not got hurt, period.
However, with injuries and with the amount of rushing that Saquon Barkley took away and how much touchdown value he had, and Jalen Hurts rushing the ball in the red zone, the opportunities got a little bit smaller. However, the percentage of the opportunities that AJ Brown had last year was tremendous when you look at it in terms of the whole volume of the team. Say, for example, Jalen Hurts passes 22 times. Well, AJ Brown is still getting 25% of those targets. And you can go back and you can look at those stats, and he's hovering always around that 20 to 25 kind of percent mark when healthy. So you look at it and you say, well, if Jalen Hurts decides to pass the ball 31 times, I'm going to be A-okay. If he's at 22, I'm going to struggle a little bit, but the way he's being used, I'm not going to. And that's the same kind of discussion to have with DJ Moore. You look at DJ Moore's stats and you say, well, it's nothing really to kind of write home about. It was another season, not at 1,000 yards. The touchdown numbers were just okay. And the reception totals were just okay as well. And we talked about this leading into last season, is that DJ Moore was being overdrafted last season. But you look at him this season and you say, okay, in a standard or in a PPR format in 2024, he had 3 top 10 finishes. And the rest were kind of
more this is.
Yeah. And the rest were kind of, mid to terrible. And you say, okay, well, why is that? Well, there was a struggle at some point in that season for Caleb Williams, that Caleb Williams was also, throwing some interceptions, not making good decisions.
He was a sack machine.
Yeah, getting sacked. Keenan Allen was also on the team, taking some much needed receptions away from
I think that Keenan Allen part can't be overemphasized. The fact that he won't be there.
You look, and Caleb Williams was throwing the ball still 28 to 35 to 40 times a game. And so you look at the percentage that DJ Moore had, and it was a super high percentage that DJ Moore had of the overall targets on the team. Well, now Keenan Allen is gone. Who do we want here, Joe?
It's going to be Henderson.
Okay. I'd like Walker if Walker's there on the comeback. I know Henderson won't be, but if we could get Henderson, there goes
Oh,
Walker.
Walker's not there either. He went to pick before us.
Yeah, Henderson will be nice here. I'll get back to what I was saying about Chicago in a minute.
So it's Henderson and the flex, Bob. So if we're looking here for my flex choice here, I'm looking at Olave or Judkins or Waddle. Those are my three guys I'd want to have one of the three.
I've soured a little bit on Olave because it's an unsure quarterback situation now. I understand that there's some good value there. I know he just went. I don't want Judkins. I don't really see. I don't really want three rookie running backs this high.
See, I love the rookie run.
I know you do, but I don't want to plaster this team with all rookie running backs.
So I'm looking at then Addison, Waddle, or McMillan.
I'd be okay with Hawk, to be honest with you. Addison would be fine as well. One of the Minnesota guys.
Addison it will be because Hawk would be too far of a reach right now.
Either one's fine.
Yeah, we might be able to get a Hawk on the second turn. His ADP's in the 80s.
Yeah, I just kind of want to look at one thing for a moment because I want some rankings here.
So this pick coming around will either be Judkins or the Hawk then.
All right, that's fine. All right, so
and let's go spend people watching and the entire draft board just saw us. Which again, by the way, so you guys signed up with us. That's cool. Just let us know you're playing.
Okay.
We love talking live drafts. We're doing. There's nothing better than a draft with people you're talking with.
So we kind of what I was saying about DJ Moore is that you look at where his targets are at, right? And so if we look at the totality of his targets on the year, he had 140 targets. So he's averaging 8 targets a game. Okay. That is significant.
Which is good. I mean, that's basically like, yeah, I mean, you're talking about 8 targets a game. You're probably going to be somewhere around 8 to 12-ish in total targets a season.
So building off that, Keenan Allen had 8 targets a game. Okay. So it's not like, so with the loss of Keenan Allen, what we're going to see most likely is they're going to run the ball a little bit more. They're going to make an advantageous effort to go out there and run the ball.
Oh, they're definitely doing that.
However, if we look at where those targets, like DJ Moore in general, and we say, okay, let's project Caleb Williams is going to throw the ball 28 times a game. And DJ Moore is going to have 20% of those targets. That is enough volume to support DJ Moore as either a wide receiver 2 or 3 in a fantasy team or an overall wide receiver 1. Because let's look at the numbers. You're looking at.
Oh, yeah, no, Bob, you're 100% right. He could hit. This is just, I don't believe in the quarterback. I mean,
right.
I have never really hated on DJ Moore. DJ Moore is, quite frankly, this is going to be a really hard stat to back up, but he might have the most talent to worst quarterback ratio of any receiver who's active in the NFL right now. In terms of really good talent, but never had a good quarterback.
He's had a rough go of things in terms of quarterbacks. And like that's why I'm saying is that like in certain builds, I am really okay if DJ Moore is my number 1 wide receiver in the 3rd round. I'm okay with that if I started 2 running backs. And I'm also okay with DJ Moore as my 2nd or my 3rd. Quite frankly, I think that if I'm looking at the wide receivers that he's around, like you can argue that, outside, like in terms of like total targets, you can argue that Garrett Wilson, JSN, and DJ Moore will probably have significant target shares moving into next year. You look at just this last year. I just want to kind of end on DJ Moore here, but you look at the top target earners on average, and this is through 18 games. We bring this down to 17 games. And you're looking at these guys. These 3 guys were the only 3 that earned over 10 targets a game. That is CD, Jamar, Malik, 1st round talent, in and of itself, right? Then you come down to the next quadrant of guys. and you're looking at, and we're going with 9 and above. J. Jeff, Garrett Wilson, T. Higgins, Puka, Devontae Adams. Okay. And that's why Joe and I are are really high on Puka and Devontae Adams. Ryan, we'll get to that question in a minute. We're really high on him because Stafford is one of those players that when he decides to throw the ball, it's really only the 2 guys. And those 2 guys that earned 9 targets a game are on the same team. And it's very likely that Matt Stafford will throw the ball 25 to 32 times a game, even with Kyron running the ball, because Kyron's not so efficient. Then you come and you look at the next set. These are all guys above 8. Okay. Stephon Diggs, Wan'Dale Robinson, DJ Moore, Cooper Kupp, Jerry Jeudy, Jackson Smith, Amon-Ra, Keenan Allen, Jacoby.
Hey, Bob, what do you think of Goff right here? No, never mind.
Nico and Drake London. And you're looking at that and you say, okay, well, who are you going with here? This should be Fields, right?
Oh, no, we'll be able to get. I think we'll be able to get Fields next round.
Are you confident in that?
I want to take Caleb Johnson because it's the last of the running back cliff, and I want a third one.
You can do that. And so when you look at those numbers and you look at those situations, that's that outside of Wan'Dale Robinson last year, right? In terms of target share, because those targets were like a high volume, but low yardage. He's right there in the conversation to say like, hey, there's reason to believe that DJ Moore could take the next step in the coming year if the quarterback play improves. And you have to believe in that. If that's how you're drafting DJ Moore, then you definitely would believe in it. And it would give you reason to believe that maybe you want to take Caleb Williams. But I would say if I'm drafting DJ Moore, that I don't necessarily have to stack Caleb with DJ Moore. Because as we showed last week, that DJ Moore's success does not actually mean that Caleb Williams is going to be successful, which is a weird kind of wrinkle that we saw in last week's stats that we pulled up. Ryan, good to see you again, Ryan. So Dynasty Superflex win now. Love winning now. My running back room is Breece, Jacobs, Kamara, Ramondre. I want to package Ayuk and Olave for a strong running back. I have a deep wide receiver room. Is there a running back that I'd go for? So yes, there are guys that I would go for, but then there are guys that you could realistically get with those 2 wide receivers, knowing their injury history. One guy that I would kind of really think about, and it's a guy that we go back and forth on this show a lot about, but I think it's important to note that Ken Walker is young. Ken Walker is fast. Ken Walker is agile. And Ken Walker can be really successful if healthy in the NFL. I do think that if I am trading Ayuk and Olave, that right now Ayuk and Olave's values have kind of fallen off of a cliff because Ayuk, with the injury and probably not coming back until later on in the year, and then and we don't know what he's going to be at later on in the year, and then Olave with the 4 concussions is going to be a struggle. So we look and we say, okay, Ken Walker is a possible option. Likewise, I know it's going to be difficult to go out there and get a rookie right now, but it is possible that if you want to move into a rookie, you might be able to do a 1-for-1 in that trade room there. I'd be moving off Ramondre as well. I would include him in any package that I'm sending to anybody, because I don't feel, and I know Joe feels the same way, that Ramondre Stevenson is going to have a job for much longer in the NFL. He fumbles too much.
Yeah, definitely not as the sole carrier is over.
He's inefficient, and it's just not going to work. So if I'm going out there and I'm targeting somebody, I would prioritize Ken Walker because I think the value that you have with Ayuk and Olave is a strong wide receiver when healthy, but because
I need to pause in preparation for the pick of these go fast. Mooney, Mims, Shaheed. Which one you want?
Let's take Mooney.
or Coleman.
You know what? Let's take Shaheed. Take Shaheed.
And then we're going to take McCarthy on the next turn.
McCarthy? Why?
Yeah, we have two Vikes. We have 2 Vikings.
Oh, I didn't notice that. Yeah, we do. Interesting. I didn't know you picked Addison.
Yeah, we got Addison and Hunt.
But Ryan, to this end, I'm fairly confident in Jacobs this year. I think that Kamara is probably reaching a point in time where he is going to be, he had that big game, 50-point game this year, and he's still going to have a decent amount of value. But I do think that they're preparing to move this franchise in a different direction. And I'm not quite sure how much more Kamara is going to offer in terms of significant fantasy value on a week-to-week basis. He's still going to have. I
can't believe they gave him a contract.
He's still going to have fantasy value, but I'm not really sure if this is the way that they're going to continue to use to move their franchise forward, because it's just not been successful in terms of playoff pushes. So if I were you, I would really be thinking about, okay, I'm keeping Breece and Jacobs, and I'm more than open to moving on from Kamara, Ramondre, Ayuk, and Olave. And I think if you were to pair Kamara with Ayuk or Olave, that you can move into a better situation at running back rather than just sticking Ayuk and Olave together. But again, that's your personal choice. I know you might like Kamara, you might like Ramondre. Ramondre has no value right now, especially even in a super flex league. His value is super minimal. And I think most people would agree. Unless you're outside, unless you're in New England. And I think even if you're in New England, most people in New England don't really like Ramondre Stevenson as well. But I'd be looking to keep Breece and Jacobs and move off Kamara and Ramondre for a better win now core. Maybe Kamara and Olave could buy you, Henderson and somebody else, or maybe you can get even more than that. So let us know, Ryan, what you're hoping to get. Like, who are you hoping to get? Because I think, like I said, Ayuk and Olave could probably move you into the Ken Walkers of the world. If you throw Kamara plus Ayuk or Olave, or Kamara, Ramondre, and Olave, you could probably get a little bit more to a team that's really strapped on, needing right now value. So if you let us know what you're thinking about, we can definitely help you out more. So you're taking McCarthy here?
Bob, I want to just talk about McCarthy here for a hot minute. I was on the record on draft day. This recording we did 1 year ago today. I was saying McCarthy was my 3rd favorite quarterback in the draft. Yeah, I also said that whoever goes to Minnesota will instantly become my favorite. And part of the reason is obviously the nest, who he's throwing the ball to. But the one thing that I don't think Minnesota gets credit for, that coach might be the best at developing quarterbacks.
You're welcome, Ryan.
He resurrected Dalton's career.
Yeah, well, Darnold's career, yeah. I mean, you look at it and you say, like, there were conversations like last year, just like, when JJ McCarthy got hurt, because a lot of people were drafting him in like the 20th round, 19th round as a rookie. And you're saying, he got hurt and it's like, oh shit, like what are we going to do? And then they brought in Darnold, and it's like the quarterback whisperer. It's kind of like how the Pittsburgh Pirates pitching coach was for a long time, with these random pitchers and just like resurrecting their careers for like very small spurts of time. And, Darnold looked good last year. And, the jury's still out on what JJ McCarthy will look like in game with the Minnesota Vikings. But as I said a couple of weeks ago, one of the things that was happening with JJ McCarthy was that his value was being drawn and brought up the board because people just want the stacks. So you're consuming, as a watcher, as a listener, everybody consumes various fantasy content, either from us, Fantasy Dog Pound, Establish the Run, all these different places. And what we know, the fact of the matter is that we know stacks work. You want a stack. And when you look at where those stacks do work at, is when you think about the value and you think about the proposed, how that offense could look going into the year. Like, I'm not super pumped about doing like a Trevor Lawrence, Brian Thomas stack, because I just don't think as a quarterback, Trevor Lawrence will provide you with enough week-to-week value.
Bob, it's so great you gave that an example. That was during my monologue before you popped up.
To get you to the next level. So I'm looking for stacks that have the chance where the quarterback specifically has a chance to get 3-4 touchdowns, 300 yards. And when I look at Minnesota, is that Sam Darnold was doing that last year. And and who was the direct beneficiaries of that? You had multiple games last year where both Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson were popping off for 20, 30, 40. I mean, it felt like crazy that there was a time where you could go with a Minnesota onslaught or a Tampa Bay onslaught. And that's why I really like the Tampa Bay onslaught kind of idea with the Godwins and the Evans and the Buckies, because for Baker Mayfield to work, he's going to need those guys to pop off. But with JJ, it's kind of like a smaller version of that. Now, we don't know how efficient the running game is going to be in Minnesota. Everybody is pretty down on Aaron Jones due to injuries.
Yes.
And so who can we take here?
I don't know. Those my three players were the three just went in a row.
I know.
We go Fergie.
I don't want Ferguson.
Or Leggett or Palmer.
I'd be okay with like Leggett, Coker, or something like that. All
right.
So on the comeback,
you don't want Richardson on the next pick.
No, on the comeback, we can take Devin Neal or RJ Harvey, one of those two.
I'm pretty sure Neal already went. All right, we can take Harvey. Actually, I'd rather have Neal. I'll take Neal.
Yeah, Neal didn't go yet. But back to my point is that when we look at McCarthy, he is directly being propped up, not because anybody really has confidence in what his skill level will be at this level, but it's being propped up by those people that have the stacks. So I think out of like all of these quarterbacks, that realistically speaking, like you're going to get a decent amount of value with JJ McCarthy this year, because, you know, we're looking at wide receivers like Addison and like Jefferson, where Jefferson's a guy that can get you yards after catch and really prop that quarterback stat up to get you into that 300, to get you into that, 4 touchdowns and stuff like that. But I do worry about a guy like JJ McCarthy, and I'm not. He's like another guy that I'm not necessarily pushing the stack for, right? So like if I don't get JJ and I have Addison and I have Jefferson, I'm not like going to be upset about it. But at the same point in time, if it's a YOLO play, when you get down here into these quarterbacks, the Penixes, the Staffords, the Lawrences, the Tuas, the Darnolds, the Wards, the Youngs, a lot of these guys have some question marks. And if you have their pass catchers, especially if you have 2 of them, you might as well take the quarterback. So if I have Stafford, like we were saying earlier in the year, if I'm planning on building Puka, well, I'm also planning on building Adams. And then because Stafford's so cheap, I'm building him. But like I said earlier about DJ Moore, is that I'm not necessarily building Caleb, because if I'm drafting both Bears, I probably am. But if I'm drafting only one Bear, I'm probably not, because it's not like he has to pass the ball all the time to DJ Moore. He can, but it's not like he has to, right? Matt Stafford is definitely going to pass the ball to Devontae Adams and Puka. So if you have both, or if you have one, you probably should take Matt Stafford. Brock Purdy. I'm not taking Brock Purdy if I only took Jennings or if I only took Pearsall. I would have had to have taken both in order to want to take Brock Purdy. I mean, there's varying gradations of the stack. There are certain guys that I'm doing a 1-for-1 stack with. And then there are other guys that I'm doing a 2-for-1 stack with. And then there are other guys still yet that I'm doing a 3-for-1 stack with. One of the guys that if you can afford to do it, and this is if you can afford to do it, would be a guy like Baker Mayfield. If you can afford the Baker Mayfield stack of Mike Evans, Godwin, and Bucky, I'm doing that, because there's a penchant for a guy like Bucky to catch the ball as well. And we know Godwin's really good at it. We know that Mike Evans is really good at it. And if you don't want to go Godwin, you can go McMillan a little bit later. CJ Stroud, for example. If I have Nico and I want to stack CJ, I'm also building Christian Kirk, or I'm also building Emeka Egbuka, who I think could go to Houston. It's just talking, like Joe said, we have TJ Hawkinson, we have Jordan Addison, so it does make sense to go JJ McCarthy. But if we only had Justin Jefferson, going JJ, there's minimal return on that stack because JJ could throw it to Jordan Addison as well, where there's a reasonable number 2. And that's the conversation that people are having about Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is one of those ones that is also going to cost you a lot. But it makes sense that if you have T or, Chase, and you have Chase and you want to go T and then Burrow, it makes sense if you're willing to sink that much value into it. And it's one of the reasons too, Joe, why, I've told you about Bryce Young, is that while the jury is still out on a guy like Bryce Young, if I'm building Bryce Young, I'm also building Xavier Legette and another one of those wide receivers, because
So Bob, let's hit on that for this draft here right here. So we already have 2 quarterbacks on the roster with McCarthy and Fields, and it's pretty much just desperately bad with the amount of people that are on the board. But when I look at it, I don't have any Steelers left, so there's no point in taking Rodgers. I don't have any Browns, so there's no point in taking Dart or Shador. And I don't have any Giants. But I got Shaheed, so I'm going to throw Derek Carr. He's my tiebreaker amongst these tier of crap. And my tiebreaker is the stack.
That's the tiebreaker. You're absolutely right. That is the tiebreaker. But I want to caution to say that the news is saying that he's not going to play. So I don't want a quarterback.
Not going to play, like retire?
No, that he's injured, that he has a problem with his shoulder, and that he might not.
I know he's injured right now, but he'll be fine for the start of the season.
They're not saying that's the case. They're saying it could take him out, this could take him out for the season. So in my mind, I do think that the Saints are going to draft a rookie quarterback, whether that's Jackson Dart, whether that's Tyler Shook, whether that's Shador.
Well, it's going to be Shador or Dart then. If they believe that, a quarterback will go at 11. Which means it's Shador or Dart. Because
here's the thing. The rookie is either going to play a bunch.
I'd rather take Rodgers then. Add everything you all just set up, I'm going to take Rodgers. An unstacked Rodgers.
So here's the thing. The rookie
That's a stupid sentence.
The rookie is going to either play a significant amount or sit a significant amount. But he's definitely not getting benched. So Rodgers could totally get pulled out of game and whatnot and get angry and retire. But the rookie's not going to retire. So, there is that inkling in me that if I have Shaheed, I'll take a chance on Dart. I'll take a chance on Shador, because at least I know that they're probably going to play. It's
either way, it's a next turn problem. It's a problem for the 19th pick.
Yeah, it's a struggle there. But anyway, so when we look at the board, especially pre-draft, so these are going to end tomorrow. So when we look at where we're standing, and when we look at, ahead towards Best Ball Mania.
I'm going to do so many of these tomorrow, by the way.
And when we look at morning family, how's it going, man? When we look at ahead to Best Ball Mania, we're going to be talking about, after this draft ends, we're going to be talking about some guys that are probably going to rise up significantly to keep your eye on, depending on these situations. Especially some of these rookies, because right now.
Yeah, well, that's the point. Can I pause on that? You guys noticed every running back I took in this draft was a rookie. Part of it was I boxed out with some guys I wanted, like Benson. But the other part of the rookies have a chance of going up. None of the established players can go higher than they are already. These are all buying lottery tickets.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Once you get to round 13, 14, I'd say 14. No, 13. You should be on looking for upwards potential. If I am sitting there, and I don't have a quarterback yet, maybe that's not, I'm still looking for upwards potential. If I don't have a tight end yet, I'm looking for upwards potential. But we get down here to a guy like Jalen Milroe, 18th round quarterback. he's going to get drafted. Will he sit? Maybe. Will he start? Maybe. Is he going to be more or less efficient than Aaron Rodgers? Who knows? But what I do know is that, again, he's not retiring. So he has a better chance for me right now to play than Aaron Rodgers does. He has a better chance to play more than potentially Russell Wilson does if I don't have a guy like Malik Neighbors. So I think, and like that's the thing too with some of these rookie tight ends, you're all like not about the rookie tight end, and I understand that.
Oh, I'm not.
Let's take a look at it, family. Let's take a look at the deal. I understand why you're not on the rookie tight ends, but there's just a conversation that you can have with yourself that there is a good reason to potentially be on the rookie tight end. Let's say they invest the third round capital and Harold Fannin Jr. ends up on Tennessee.
Well, Bob, I still think I'm stuck with Carr, though, because the choices are Carr, Flacco, Rudolph, and Derek Jones.
I don't think you should have went Bashard Smith there. I think you should have went the rookie, but I think Carr's a wasted pick. But
I think any of them are wasted picks, quite frankly.
I'm just saying, I think it's an outward, like a zero, a straight up zero.
We'll see. I think they all are, but at least Carr's on the team.
Well, yeah, but he's hurt.
Again,
like,
you will know the truth about Derek Carr's injury Thursday. If
yeah,
the
but
Saints
here's the
draft
thing.
the quarterback, it's messed up. If it's not, he isn't.
And they're going to draft the
Because
quarterback.
the Saints need starters. The Saints are a roster depleted. They cannot be using a first-round pick on a bench guy.
There's a reason why I don't like Carr specifically on this team, and I'll tell you why after we look at Family's trade here. So Family traded Mixon, Tyrone Tracy, and Mike Williams for Achane. This is a deal, and we'll tell you why. While both teams are probably going to go out and look at rookies in this running back class, because why wouldn't you? If you're a team right now and you can get one of these rookies on a rookie contract, why wouldn't you? But here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
The offensive line for Houston is pretty trash. They need to do a lot of improvements to it. And while
they've done some decent work so far.
While we have stated, we love CJ Stroud, we love Nico. It directly affects how long CJ Stroud is holding the ball, all that stuff. But it also directly impacts Joe Mixon a lot. Is that, there are some players that are not good at pass blocking, but are good at run blocking, et cetera, et cetera. But Joe Mixon thrives on volume. This has been a truth to Joe Mixon's career, almost his entire career. Is that when Joe Mixon gets rolling, similar to
touchdowns in one game and it's 7 on the season.
Similar to Najee, if you get Mixon rolling, he's going to be great. However, the problem is that, well, if Nico's healthy, Kirk is healthy, and they have and they draft a rookie wide receiver, will Mixon get rolling? Yeah, he'll have plenty of red zone opportunities, I think, but there is some limited return there. Tyrone Tracy, they're probably going to look for a running back. Why wouldn't they? And Mike Williams, we do like Mike Williams, but again, similar.
So, guys, first off, get a chance to look at the board. We want your votes of who won this draft. Your first 6 rounds.
You go in and you go out and get Achane. Achane's a guy that we look at last season, we say, wow, that was a little bit rough, but he still provided a lot of value through the passing game. That was awesome. And then we look at the year before where he was hyper efficient rookie, looked great, and just dominated. 30-point performances, 20-point performances, etc. There is a conversation to be had that either way you look at it, depending on if they get a running back or not, that Devon Achane is going to hold a lot of value out of all the running backs, like in this grouping in the first 2 rounds. He is most closely, I think, that I can associate to a guy like Gibbs. If you're in a platoon, great. That is more electricity from the player. If he's not in a platoon,
it helps Gibbs. It would help Achane too.
That's more volume, right? So either way you look at it, I think that's a win-win. I really do. And you said here, family, that he was the last player you inherited when you took over the team, turning it over and winning a title. I mean, this is the type of trade that wins you a title because you're willing to give up a decent amount of quantity for a really quality option. I'm not saying,
and in general, going back to all of our conversations, you want to get rid of the fat off your roster to make the starting decisions easier. Now, granted, this time of the year, you want a little bit of insurance for injury, but Achane is never a worst running back 2 the entire season. So that's something there. So yeah, guys, fire out.
Let's take a look, Joe.
Won?
I said after the draft was over, I wanted to take a look at some risers and potential risers and fallers after tomorrow's draft. So after the NFL draft that we're going to come across tomorrow, we're going to see the situations evolve for some of these rookies. So Genty, Omarion Hampton, and Trevion Henderson, we've talked about them ad nauseum at times on our show. But you're going to see a rise in Best Ball Mania, and you're going to see a rise here in DraftKings as well, in that maybe not with Genty, but most likely with Omarion Hampton and Trevion Henderson. When you look at where they land, there is a reasonable argument that you can make that after Breece Hall, you would probably put Omarion Hampton over a guy like Chase Brown or Cook. Trevion Henderson will probably rise into that fourth round conversation where Omarion Hampton is going currently. Depending on what the Bengals do. If the Bengals go out and draft a running back over the next couple of days, you're going to have a greater understanding of where Chase Brown will be. And Chase Brown could rise back into the third round at times, or he could probably fall into the fifth round if they end up drafting a rookie running back with decent volume capabilities. Family, in terms of your question here, would you deal the 110 for Addison, seeing that you took him here?
Family, I would treat that as a draft day trade. I don't want to do that blindly, because if you end up taking a receiver, the receiver almost certainly will be worse than Addison. But if you get a running back in a good spot that you can get at 110, I would do that, because I value running backs higher than receivers. So I wouldn't really do that until I knew someone like Judkins got to 10. If Judkins is at 10, I would do that blind without knowing where Judkins is at. If you could tell me right now, Addison or Judkins, I would do it.
I wouldn't. I like Addison because I do think that your team does have strong value already in the running back market. And I don't necessarily see that you need to push Addison off the team necessarily. But I get where Joe's coming from. Like if I could definitely verify with everything that I'm seeing from all of my league mates that there will be a running back there, I could see myself trading away that pick, because it's around the similar value, right? So Addison to Judkins, it's very much similar-ish value. You take a look at some other guys that could potentially fall, right? And potentially rise depending on what happens. There's a lot of chatter and a lot of smokescreen.
Najee's perfectly. Najee's there. You can see Najee can drop to 10, or he can be up to 4. So if the Chargers get a running back in the first 3 rounds, he's at 10. If not, he's climbing up.
So for me, a couple of guys here, right? Sticking still with the running backs, we're going to jump into the wide receivers in a moment. Najee, absolutely one of those guys. They already have Kamani Vidal, but again, it's Kamani Vidal, and we haven't seen a lot from him. If they go out and make a big investment in the first 3 rounds in a running back, I'm definitely dropping Najee maybe a round or 2. Because again, he's a volume-based guy that I do think has the potential to get a lot of touchdowns this year in an offense that's capable of moving the ball, because the Steelers were not capable of moving the ball. Jaylen Warren will either climb or drop depending on the type of running back the Steelers draft. So if the Steelers draft Caleb Johnson, I'm dropping Jaylen Warren significantly.
If they draft Caleb Johnson or anyone before him,
I like Josh Jacobs a lot.
I'd rather have Judkins than Jacobs.
I'd rather have Jacobs. But again, Jacobs probably gets you maybe another year or 2 of significant value, and Judkins could potentially give you 4 or 5 years. So there is that market to think about, family there. So you look at a guy like, where are we going to? Which guy do I want to go to?
Aaron Jones.
Scroll down a little bit. Aaron Jones, I don't see his value moving significantly, because I don't see Minnesota going out and getting another running back. Tyrone Tracy will drop.
Well, they're not. But my point is, I think people are going to realize he's not the starter anymore.
Well, I think that he'll probably normalize to the 7th round come Best Ball Mania season. I really do. Tyrone Tracy, Ramondre Stevenson, Isaiah Pacheco. You look at that team number 7 or team number 6 there, and you look at all three of those running backs, they could all lose their job this year. The one running back that you might say, well, let's give him a chance is Isaiah Pacheco, because you might be saying, oh, well, that injury last year was pretty significant. Will he have enough time? You could play that game, but I'm not willing to consistently play that game in the 9th round. So those 3 guys plus B-Rob are guys that could fall further. I think you could see them going in the 10th round. Going up to the wide receivers. Joe, can you push up to the wide receivers here? Again, yeah, Pollard will stay where he is. I don't think Pollard will rise. I don't think Pollard will fall. Because if they go out and do what they're telling us they're going to do and take Cam Ward, and then they go out and get a wide receiver, I think that, again, we already know what Pollard is for this team, and we already know what Tajay Spears is for the team, and we already know Tajay Spears' injury history. We already know Tony Pollard's injury history. So we all know that, like, I'm a hard avoid on Tony Pollard and mostly Tajay Spears. So I'm not really thinking about them, but I think they stay where their values are. Let's take a look at some of these wide receivers. As I said, there's a lot of smoke screens in the news for guys like George Pickens and J-Mo.
I don't think Pickens is moving.
I
actually read a really good article here that articulated why he wouldn't. The one who's more likely to move is actually Roman Wilson. And the reason is, by all grading metrics, he would be at the number 5 receiver in this draft. And the Steelers don't want a receiver.
Again, we're talking about guys that can rise and fall because.
Oh, yeah. No, I get. Well, my point is Pickens isn't getting traded. This is where he is.
Well, okay. So, as I've said, though, the smoke screens are there. And once all the dust settles, J-Mo and Pickens are 2 guys that, if they were to land on another team and gain significantly high volume, you could see them rising a little bit. But I really do think that a guy like J-Mo, whether he goes to another team or stays on Detroit, will pretty much be in that 4th round. I think he's a good solid option in that 4th round, in the likes of Worthy and DK and like that. I really think that he provides a big boom for your team. Looking at guys that could be negatively impacted by potential wide receivers coming in would be Zay. There is a realistic chance and a realistic conversation that you can make that at some point in time in the next year, 2 years, 3 years, that they're also going to draft another wide receiver there in Baltimore. Now, I don't think it will.
It's not going to be this year, though.
I don't think that Zay's production will fall off too much, but his production wasn't really good enough for us starting with. So I don't think people will be happy to have Zay on their team unless they're trying to build that Lamar stack. So I could easily see certain rookie wide receivers overtaking Zay. And that's the reason that I think he falls, where I think some of those rookies start popping up a little bit over Zay, and even rookies that could potentially go to the team. Looking here at a guy like Jacoby Myers, right? Depending on what they do in the running game, depending on if they go out and get a rookie quarterback, depending on if they go out and get another wide receiver, you could see Jacoby's value staying pat or potentially rising or falling depending on what happens there. Jerry Jeudy, also in that same conversation, is that you can make a reasonable argument that Jerry
Jeudy, get Hunter, Jeudy collapses.
Yeah, you can make a reasonable argument that right now Jerry Jeudy would be okay to have over, Juwan Jennings or Jacoby
I also think Hunter will go up pretty dramatically when it's official he's a wide receiver.
Well, he says he wants to play both sides of the ball. But he
wouldn't be able to in Cleveland, because Cleveland's secondary is actually good.
If he does, I think that I would put him right after Rome, right? Is that Devontae and Rome would be like my cutoff point before I would start thinking about Travis Hunter.
That's going to be at Cleveland. But if he's on I really think that smokescreen was to try to get Cleveland not to draft him.
Yeah.
Which I completely understand.
You look at here, Team 7, and they're drafting 6 wide receivers to start. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. and there's kind of a law of diminishing returns here, and we can talk about this, family.
No,
Looking
8, 9.
8
They
wide
drafted
receivers
9
in a row.
receivers. Their first 9 picks are receivers.
So 9 picks
No,
starting at
9.
wide
They drafted
receiver.
9.
So, guys, if you're watching right now, don't do this.
That team lost.
You know,
No.
you're looking at it. They drafted a total of 9 wide receivers, and you're looking at the first 9 rounds as all wide receivers. Now, you are going to absorb a lot of content when you watch us. You're going to absorb other content when you watch other people. But what you have to understand is that you are making your team weak by doing this. You cannot do this.
Well, you essentially said I failed on 5 of my first 9 picks because 5 of those first 9, no matter what, will give you a 0. By default, that's the rules of best ball.
So,
I mean, Bob's yelling at me for taking a 0 in the 19th round, and you're doing it in the 4th.
Now, I understand and say, like, wow, Devonta Smith, great value there in the 5th round. Yeah, great value, but you can't take him. No. And then if you wanted him, maybe you take him and then you stop for a little bit and you start compiling other kinds of draft positions. But you're giving yourself a significant amount of zeros when you need. It's not like taking all these guys at the back end of the draft, right, where they're lottery picks and they could hit.
Yeah.
What Joe has said, you are statistically giving yourself zeros, a significant amount of zeros when your other player pool where your starting running back is Zach Charbonnet might not even see the field.
Yeah, so 5 of your first 9 picks are guaranteed zeros. Horrendous.
You can't do that.
Way, we're against 5, your first 5 picks, let alone any number bigger than that.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you want to go 5 wide receivers your first 5 rounds or your first 7 rounds, it's definitely something that's scary to do, but it can be successful depending on how you build. When you look at Team 9 and Team 12, absolutely. You're looking at 2 teams that have built around certain quality builds, right? So you look at Team 9, you have Puka, Drake London, Devontae Adams as your starting 3, with Jennings as your 4th wide receiver and Cook and Walker there. Now, many people are scared of Cook. That's why he's falling. Many people are scared about Walker. That's why he's falling. So it's your time to get some good value if you can mark out what that opportunity will look like. Now, Cook, in order to be successful, is going to need to do one of 2 things. What he did last year was
stay hurt.
What he did last year was they used him in the red zone. Okay. If he gets red zone reduction, which was his main thing a year previous year, if he gets a reduction in red zone usage, he's not going to return value.
Well, his previous year was his rookie year, and he wasn't a full-time starter.
He gets 100-yard games, but he doesn't it's not a significant amount. And the fact is that he's not really catching a whole bunch of passes because Josh Allen is mostly going to decide to run the ball, or they're going to bring out a 3rd down running back like Ty Johnson or they're going to bring in Ray Davis or something like that. Ken Walker has the same kind of problem. So if I'm drafting Cook, I'm probably not drafting Walker because I see similar problems within their fantasy outputs in the season. While they have really high ceilings, their floors can be catastrophically low. And so I want to kind of paint the picture that if I built Cook, I'm probably going out and getting a rookie like Henderson, or I'm probably going out and maybe, and I personally don't like it, but other people do. I might go take a chance on Connor, right? If I have a guy with a high upside and I'm looking for some balance on my team, that's fine. But Ken Walker and James Cook by themselves, I think, could be tremendous values this year. We look at the CMC team, family pointing out the CMC team, and I really like the build here.
Mm-hmm.
Where you have Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey. So you look at it and you say, okay, we talked earlier in the offseason about this, and we said, okay, if you're building CMC, you have a lot of inherent risk, but potentially a lot of great points that you can get. So you want to take a more stable, point getter in your as another running back on your team. And what they did is they took 2 of those guys. Now, Derrick Henry's situation is more stable. It could be more productive, again, leaning on some injuries. It's the old guy central on this team, minus Marv and Olave there. So you look at it and you're saying, okay, where could I go with this team? So then you come back with the wide receivers, and you're seeing 3 wide receivers that, if their quarterbacks are on, there's a good chance that each one of those wide receivers can eclipse 16 points in a given week. So we're looking at like 8 catches, 80 yards. So you're getting a good amount of value if you promote that there. Now, what I have the problem with, scroll down to their next 2 picks. This is where I have a problem. Baker is fine because you have Evans, but don't take Jared Goff. I mean, you look at the team, and it was built so well. You built out McMillan as well, so you have the double stack on Baker Mayfield, but you have absolutely nothing for Jared Goff. Mm-hmm. And like we have said time and time again, that if you're going to invest in something, and we showed you the other day, there is the possibility of, doing a double quarterback in the 7th and 8th round, like your Kylers plus a Mahomes, or your Baker plus a Murray. But doing an unstacked quarterback makes absolutely no sense. No. So if I were that drafter and I had Mayfield, even if I don't believe in Kyler Murray and I believe in Jared Goff more, then when I took Marvin Harrison, I probably would have tried to take J-Mo instead if I planned on taking Jared Goff. I wouldn't have taken Marv at that point in time because it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, if you really break it down, so this is one of the things that people will say to us in the comments, well, you didn't know it at the time. Like, you can. Like, if you do enough drafts and you think about in advance, you can plan it out. This is one of the things that, you guys have seen us do drafts basically since February, in anticipation of tomorrow. And almost every single one of them, because he's above an 80% own rate on my book, is Henderson. I know I'm doing them. I've worn incredibly high. So the thing is you can know what you're going to build. And when we were doing episodes, we would consciously say, hey, we want to take Neighbors here because we're going to do this late quarterback backfill plan. And then we did it. I think it was with Hurts and the Giants, or how we ended. So we looked for cheap stacks, and just like the tiebreakers are at the end for the quarterbacks, we just did them early. So we took Metcalf 3 spots early or whatever to build the stacks that you want. So this is something you easily can do once you have a feel for the draft. So yeah, I mean, when you're doing Best Ball Mania, you should be doing at least half of them. So at least 75 entries. By the time you get to 20, you know what the board is, and you start manipulating your own people. This is why the best winners normally come in late July and August. It's just the way it is.
Looking at the board, just like Family said here, could have waited till the second turn to get a quarterback. Absolutely. And the other thing here too, guys, is that as you prepare for these drafts and as you do these drafts yourself, and you're looking at the board, it's not, you can be looking at a position group and not necessarily a specific player. So when Joe says, make a plan. Yeah, of course, you're going to make a plan, and you want to diversify your portfolio. You want to have multiple chances to win, and you want to have that. And it's okay to have a portfolio that's a little bit higher on one guy, as long as you're not going too crazy, right? But like, for example,
either you go too crazy, you can only have 1 or 2 guys you're above 50% on.
That's it. You don't want to have 4 guys you're above 50%, 40% on, whatever. But like, let's take this as an example. Okay. Let's look at round 7 through round 9. All right. And let's specifically take a look at the wide receivers in round 7 and round 9. And notwithstanding, the player name itself. Okay. Taking a look at opportunities only. Okay, not the player name specifically. We look at opportunities only, doing this quick experiment. Okay. New England.
No.
Opportunities are going to be interesting there. You're looking at a quarterback that has the opportunity to throw the ball 32 times a game. Will those passes be for a decent amount of yards?
Probably not.
Maybe. Tennessee.
I mean, back it up. Have you ever seen that coaching staff produce a good quarterback? Fantasy-wise. I mean, even when A.J. Brown was there, he did nothing.
So, family, we are not 50% on Fields, actually.
No, not even close.
We are not 50% on Warren. We did a lot of Warren, but we're definitely not 50%.
No. So Henderson is the highest one, family. By far, it's Henderson.
Henderson has been the one we're clicking more. So going then, Tennessee. Volume will be there for the number one wide receiver. Will it be good? Yeah, because those defenses are not that good down there. So Tennessee's number one. Buffalo. Is he even the number one?
Well, the Buffalo number one is not going to be the same. A large part of Buffalo's percentage of target share last year is so skewed by the Kincaid injury and Coleman being a rookie for sure, but the argument that he was injured as well.
Mm-hmm.
That is going to, the Buffalo situation is going to be as much of a nightmare for projecting as the Chicago one was last year after Odunze got drafted.
Right. So let's keep going.
A nightmare. How were those picks going to get, those targets get distributed? And that's why I think this year, unless a stud like Warren goes there, if they draft a running back in the first round, they're so easy. It's going to be 40-40, whatever.
Let's go to the next player on the list here. Pick number 73 here. Steelers number 2. Okay.
Has to get better by default because it can't get
a good amount of projectable volume. Seattle's number 2. Okay.
Seattle's number 2 is probably going to stand pat.
That could
it's going to be what Metcalf got
Again,
last
if you're just joining us, we're taking a look at the 7th through 9th round and not taking a look at the player names and just kind of go team by team basis, number 1, number 2, in terms of like production, and asking ourselves, well, if we take the name out of it, would we still draft that player? Right? If we take the name out of it,
this is the exercise you have to do.
So you got at pick number 96 and 97, you have Indianapolis is 1 or 2, probably staying away from them for most.
Both of them actually, and both are not good. So I actually, if Richardson, this guy's like, this is why you don't play hedges with receivers, because if Richardson starts, Downs is the better option. If Jones starts, Pittman is the number 1. Because Pittman will get more targets.
We'll get to that.
So we got to give you a little clarification. The way we define number 1 and number 2 is not necessarily by the amount of payroll they're getting. It's by the amount of target share that they are getting.
Opportunities, yeah.
So that's what I say. Pittman is going. If Jones is the quarterback, Pittman's going to go back to 8+ targets a game easily. It's happening. But if Richardson is, he's going to be like 4. I mean, it's such a pain. Which one gets valued there? And I think for that reason, I don't want to punt on it consistently because, again, if it is Jones, Pittman could be a steal in the 8th round. He could give you 3rd round value, but he also can be a 0. That's the risk of Pittman. Because do you think Richardson has a chance of getting more accurate? Because I know we had the same conversation in Josh Allen's 3rd year.
Moving forward. Green Bay's number 1. There's a good chance that could get a good amount of volume. But again, we saw what happened last year. The targets were pretty spread around.
Well, it'll improve with their number 3 receiver getting less targets.
Then you have a question mark here where you have San Francisco's 1 or 2 or 3. Okay. Do you want to dip this early into a 3rd target on that team?
This is why when we're talking specific Niners, I believe Jennings gets the 1 hole until Ayuk gets healthy, and then Jennings is relegated back to the 3. That's why I'm more comfortable with Parasol, who strictly is the Debo position. That's why of the 3 of them, I'm always going to pick Parasol, and I think Jennings is way too high in the 6th round.
Yeah, and to your point,
you're out of him.
to your point here, family, just going through, and I really recommend looking at, target share, target production, because it doesn't necessarily, you're not basing it on like total yards and you're saying, oh, well, he had 1,500 yards and he had 900 yards, so I'm going to take the guy that had 1,500 yards. Well, I'm looking at opportunities. And when I look here in the 7th through the 9th round, I'm seeing various levels of opportunities. And if you ignore the name and you look at the opportunity and then you add the names back in, right? So just what we did, you look at the
This,
opportunity.
by the way, is how we do our rankings for when we do them after the draft.
You look at the opportunities that are there, and now let's see the guys, right? Now let's look at the guys. Well, Diggs is a good player, but the opportunities are
I'm not sure Diggs is a good player anymore. We're going to have a fight about that later in life.
But I'm looking and I'm seeing that last year, like I said, the number 1 target getter in New England had 83 receptions. I don't think that Diggs is going to surpass that. Ridley, no. You come down to Ridley, and last year with absolutely putrid quarterback,
63.
He had 115 targets.
Yeah, but like 63 catches.
Around like 63, 70 catches, something like that. So you look at it and you say, okay, and just like you said here, family, and you say, okay, well, I'm looking at the name now. Does that person have the skill set? Now I want to look at the threats. Absolutely. Yeah. So Ridley, they're going to probably bring in a rookie wide receiver. It is almost undoubtedly that they're going to.
Yeah, their second-round pick should be a rookie receiver. If
while Cam Ward has said for some egregious reason that Treylon Burks is the best wide receiver that he's seen, I don't know if he has the proper vision to actually see something like that. It makes me concerned. But Ridley's not going to lose out on targets. And that's why I'm a little bit more higher on Ridley in this round than a guy like Diggs, because the situation in New England is very murky. You have the potential of going out there and getting a guy like Ted. You have the potential. Pop Douglas is already there, plus Diggs, plus Henry, plus the running game is trash, plus they don't even know what they're doing. So you might want to stay away from that situation. Khalil Shakir, there's conversation that they're going to bring in a rookie wide receiver that is going to make a difference potentially immediately. Then you have Keon Coleman that they've already drafted fairly highly. Then the propensity of
Coleman was what, 34
the propensity of Josh Allen. And then you look at it and say, Shakir, okay, well, what did Shakir do last year? Well, he was a target merchant, 100 targets.
Yeah, that's great.
4 touchdowns. So you could tell that the targets that he was getting, he wasn't being.
He was Edelman. Yeah,
he wasn't being used. So would you rather take a guy like Ridley, who did have less receptions on a similar amount of targets, but does have that touchdown upside?
Ridley's a guy that Bob and I have talked about a lot off camera for a while, and Bob's high on Ridley. And I think I might be slowly coming around. I'm not sure the target share stays over 110, but I am sure the completion.
Why not? Will Levis was throwing the ball. Mason,
yeah, that's my point. The completion percentage isn't going to hang in the 50s anymore. So exactly. I think the column A, column B probably gets Ridley to about 70-ish catches. I still think that it's a team that is in denial of where it's at. Their offensive line sucks, and they're buying skilled positions instead. That's not how you fix a team. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a lot of Carolina Panthers going on in Tennessee, which makes me not want to invest in them. But that being said, there'll also be a lot of garbage time with a rookie quarterback who will just be forcing the ball to by far the best receiver they have.
All right, let's just do a fun experiment here, Joe, because I think I made my point about guys like that.
Welcome, Magic.
So let's take a look at some. What's up, Mr. Magic? So let's take a look at, for example, let's just stay on Calvin Ridley for a minute, because I do think that his value is really good right now, and I'm snapping him up a lot of opportunities I get. Cam Ward's completion percentage in college was 67% throughout the whole year. A couple of games spiking above 70%, nothing below 60%, obviously. Mm-hmm. He's at a completion percentage of 67%. I'm looking up right now how many passes last year. So I'm looking up how many passes the Tennessee Titans threw last year. So that, quick AI search here, on Google, 530 pass attempts. Okay.
So you're looking at like 320 completions is the prognostication.
So, yeah. So if we look and we say, okay, they're going to throw the ball 530 times, and we take the 67% of Cam Ward. Now we know that's probably not
400. If you're giving him the straight 67%, I was downgraded to about 63. But yeah, you're looking between 330 and 400 completions.
Yeah, if you go straight 67, that's 355. And you go, let's just say he's at 60%, right? So you're looking at like 320. Yeah. And you say that Calvin Ridley is probably going to get 20% of those targets. So
like 40% of those targets.
Let's just say it's 20. Let's just say it's a safe 20%. Say he's going to get
60 catches, 64 catches.
20% of that, that's going to be 64 catches, and that's what he got this year. And he got 1,000 yards this year on that.
Well, that's why I'm saying you can make an argument he's going to be at 80 catches. That puts him at 1,200, 1,300 yards. And you say that, that's way better than a 7th round guy. And Bob, you're right. You might have identified the first official sleeper here before we're even allowed to put in our official sleepers.
So,
and people like Family are why he's a sleeper, because no
Family
one wants
and Magic. So I'm like, I would tend to agree with you. Like, you know me and how I feel about Tennessee and how I felt about Calvin Ridley all year last year.
Line sucks though.
But when I look at Ridley and I look at what he had to deal with, similar to what some other guys had to deal with, is that there were games where he's highly targeted, but he didn't catch a ball because they were all thrown above his head. And we know Ridley has talent, right? And so when I look at guys like that and I say, okay, well, the opportunity is probably going to be there. But with a guy like Cooper Kupp, for example, I know that Darnold passes the ball a significant amount, but I also know that Cooper Kupp has been injured a lot. So while I think the Seattle number 2 could be really successful with Sam Darnold, I'm not quite sure, going based on our analysis here, Family, is that I'm not sure that a guy like Kupp is a guy I want to take because of the injury history, even though Seattle's number 2 could be fairly successful this year. Magic, when it goes to Shedeur.
Let's hit on these, Magic. Shedeur in this draft fell 4 rounds below his ADP to the 19th round. Where he falls tomorrow, I think that there's 2 indicators of this. The first is we're going to find out at pick 11 how injured Carr is. If Carr is truly injured, a quarterback goes at 11. If it's Dart instead of Shedeur, Sanders will fall until about 19 when Cleveland trades back into it for him.
So, Joe, I
don't think Shedeur goes past 20.
You misspoke. The Saints are sitting at 9. So,
sorry. He's not going past 9. But they might take Dart instead of Shedeur.
Yeah, this is the conversation, like you said. If the Saints are sitting there at 9 and they decide not to trade up, the conversation to be had is Dart or Shedeur. Whichever one of those quarterbacks doesn't go, I could see one of 2 things taking place, similar to what you said, Joe. Either another quarterback not being drafted in the first round at all, or a trade up with either.
Well, how many do you think do get drafted in the first round? Let's start with that.
I want to say I think probably 2.
I think it's 3.
I think 2 get drafted in the first round. I think that, to be honest with you, I think the Steelers is kind of a red herring right now based upon
the Steelers aren't taking one. But I think because of the Steelers, either the Cleveland or the Giants are going to trade ahead of them, which is why I say Shedeur will not go past 20.
Right. I think you're right about that, but I think the Steelers. So again, this is all about gamesmanship and craziness, right? Is that the Giants definitely want a quarterback, but they're going to see how interested other teams are. So the Steelers and other teams have to kind of make it out to like, oh, we're going to take them. So you spend your draft capital to kind of like move up, right? Or else they're going to be a quarterback sitting there at 33. And, people are much maligned on like the Tyler Shucks of the world and stuff like that. And saying, like they're all, last year they would have been like the 10th best quarterback or the 12th best quarterback.
Oh, that's all true. Yeah.
But when we look at it and you say, okay, like there's opportunities to trade up, for example, Like if the Chiefs, the Eagles, and the Bills are sitting there, and they'd probably like, okay, yeah, if you want to trade back up into the first round and make Shadur or Jackson Dart, if they're still there, a first round pick, yeah, we'll do that with you. I don't think the Giants take a quarterback at 3. I think that they're much more interested in either the Travis Hunter or the Abdul Carter, whoever's there. There's conversation to say that, maybe the Patriots move up a slot to take who they want there. And then you look again, like I said, the Saints and the Steelers after that are, and maybe the Colts, but I don't think the Colts would invest in a quarterback in the first round, are teams that you would say, oh yeah, you should probably draft a quarterback early. The Rams might. Stafford's getting old. They might do it because, they really have nobody behind them. So the conversation to be had is there could be a precipitous drop for Shadur Sanders. And mainly, this is not because of Shadur's skill, because Shadur has skills in certain areas on the football field. That is undeniable. He definitely does. As a whole quarterback, there are many things that people don't like about him, and Joe has said that multiple times. But strictly, a lot of these things is coming into the entitlement picture. There has been multiple news sources that have reported that there are various assistant coaches, various draft analysts in certain team circles that have been saying, we'll get to that question about Travis for sure. You go to that analysis and say he's entitled. He's only ever been coached by his dad.
Yeah, he's always been on the best team on the field until he got to Colorado and only went 500.
Interviews are not going well, and teams.
Well, he also tanked his interviews on purpose when he was full of himself until people started talking shit on him, and then he went back and repeated visits to Cleveland and the Giants.
So you're looking at a guy that has a skill set that some teams would value, and they need a quarterback, and they don't want a problem. They don't want a potential diva. I'm not saying he is, but a potential diva.
That is, and that's the thing. So, Henry, we will get to your question here for your Superflex. Magic, let me answer your question here in terms of Henry. So
in terms of
Hunter, yeah. So your question was, does Hunter play both ways? He certainly does not play D-back in Cleveland. He will not, because he's not better than the 3 that they already have. So when he came out and said that, I believe it was really him trying to get out of Cleveland. So he wouldn't go number 2 to Cleveland and go 3 to the Giants. I think if Travis Hunter, true serum, that would be what he wants. And that's why he said that, because he certainly would play both ways for the Giants. For Cleveland, he'll only be a receiver. And I think that's exactly where that context was coming from. Cleveland, just take the edge rusher from Penn State. You guys don't need to worry about us.
Yeah.
But that being said, for fantasy purposes, he's 100% playing receiver.
So, here's the thing. Building off that Travis Hunter thought for just a moment, I agree with you completely. For Travis Hunter, I think the better landing spot is the Giants. But I could also see another team like New England trading up with the Giants to get Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter is an athletic specimen. And to the point that I believe you made here, family, is that once
if you're the Giants, why would you not take Hunter though? What are you going to get from New England to make it worth it?
Once injuries hit, the projection for Travis Hunter is going to probably look drastically different. So as we look ahead to the draft tomorrow, is that teams are going to be pretty liquid in how they feel about Travis Hunter and saying, okay, we're going to give this guy opportunities because he's talented on both sides of the ball. However, once injuries start to accumulate on my team, if Travis Hunter is not one of those injuries, he is going to do what we need him to do. He does not get to dictate what he does. And that, I think, is really important, that you have a strong coaching staff in tow to say that the player's no matter how talented the player is.
And that's the ironic part. Cleveland does have a stronger coaching staff than the Giants. Everyone in the Giants is in a hot seat. Stefanski's won Coach of the Year twice in Cleveland, despite never winning a division title. It's ironic.
Yeah, and so you look at it and you say, okay, so KC always seems to trade up a few. Buffalo doesn't mind sliding back into day 2, but the Bills are rumored to trade up to 24 to get a Von Miller.
Here's the hot thing with Kansas City to look out for, and this is something that I'm really interested in hoping to do. Henry. I'm seeing a lot of things of them trying to get ahead of the Chargers, to try to get Loveland, and the reason is so that the Chargers don't get them and they get the replacement to Kelsey. So let's answer Henry's question. We're kind of going down the rabbit hole.
That makes sense a lot. So, Joe, Henry has a 12-team Superflex draft on RT Sports last month and just realized today that no one drafted Michael Penix Jr., and I have the number 1 waiver claim. I already have Nix, Fields, and McCarthy at quarterback. I'm trying to flip Nix and Ingram for Bowers and Daniel Jones. Kirk Cousins and Rodgers got drafted too. I didn't know it's because I had 3 already. Okay, so here's the deal.
So here's how you do this, Henry.
I don't want Daniel Jones.
Take Jones out of the trade, do a 2 for 1, and then just pick up Penix. You're net ahead, and you get a better team.
So that's
how I would do it. It's easier to get the trade through, and you get a better quarterback.
Here's my feeling, Joe, and I know family and I have kind of felt the same way about Bo Nix for a while, and you are very down on Bo Nix.
I am.
But if we just kind of look at what you want to trade here, I do think that unless you're
he's never starting him. Even in a Superflex.
I do think that if I'm moving Nix and Ingram, that combination, that stack is going to be enough for a person, especially if that person has Daniel Jones, for them to flip me Brock Bowers. And they might want to flip me Daniel Jones on the return anyway. But looking at your quarterbacks
yourself, I mean, that part's fine.
Looking at your quarterbacks in general, Nix, Fields, and McCarthy.
Fields and McCarthy will be the 2 you're playing all year.
Turning that into Penix, Fields, and McCarthy, I don't necessarily see it as a huge swing, but what I do see as it being, Henry, is that if you can flip Nix and Ingram for Bowers, that's where you get the advantage at. So if you can move those 2 guys, because right now Fields and McCarthy don't have as much inherent value for most people as Nix does. So like family is saying here, most people aren't going to want to deal away Bo Nix in a super flex right now. They're not going to want to do it because Bo Nix has the potential to slot you 28 points. You're not going to trade him away. But
I don't think he's got anywhere come near that this year.
But that's just what you need to think right now, is that because there are so many people saying I won't trade Bo Nix, you are getting a little bit of an advantage and saying, I'm willing to trade him to you, but I'm willing for only premium value. And Bowers is the premium value. It's not necessary that I want Daniel Jones back. I get why you want it, but I would definitely want Brock Bowers. So you hope you can land it. Got lucky and got Nix in the 4th round at the 12th hole. He's at the end of round 2, start of round 3. If you do move for Nick, like I said, if you do move on from Nix, I do believe that Nix is a very strong play. And I have built, and Joe will yell at me all the time, I have built a lot of best ball teams with Bo Nix, Cortland Sutton, and Evan Ingram, or with Evan Ingram and Marvin Mims, etc. I don't think you're going to be hunting for a QB1 all season, because I do think that Fields and McCarthy could do that. But again, if you can go out and get Brock Bowers and upgrade from Ingram to Brock Bowers, and then have to play this kind of game, you can.
Henry, I talked earlier about how that coach in Minnesota is absolutely great at developing quarterbacks. I think you'll be fine with McCarthy, and Fields will run himself into a championship. So Magic, I saw your question here. This is a very real concern about Godwin, and I still have it. With Bob and I would go with Moore in this situation because of the injury risk. I would go with DJ Moore redraft over Godwin.
Got it, Henry.
The volume is going to be through the roof for DJ Moore without Keenan.
Oh, yeah. I mean, here's the thing, Magic. I am definitely on DJ Moore over Godwin. If we get, let's say by July 5th, we get news that Godwin is ramping up activity. He's looking better. you can make an argument that Godwin climbs, but he still doesn't climb above DJ Moore. And I understand, we talked about this at the beginning of last season as well, is that Godwin does have a lot of inherent injury risk to him. When he's on the field, he is super productive. So, you look at it and you say, DJ Moore definitely over Godwin if I had to choose right now. And I think come August that I'd still choose the same way, all things considered, if everybody is healthy. And family, as we've said earlier in the show, DJ Moore's situation, while I don't necessarily agree that it can only get better, it can't, the production's not going to get any worse. So
the floor pretty much is what it is.
Yeah, I think the floor is the floor is 900 yards, 60 to 70 catches, and 4 to 6 touchdowns. The ceiling's tremendous. The ceiling could be 1,200 yards, 100 catches, and 8-9 touchdowns, and that's why I'm willing to invest in guys like that. Exactly. Dealing Ingram before this draft, particularly knowing that if you do this trade now and Denver goes out and drafts a tight end because maybe they're not confident in Evan Ingram for the long haul, you're winning. If you don't do this trade today, it might not move itself in that direction come after draft day. So there's just a lot of things to think about. So as we look, this will be the final pre-draft, YouTube before tomorrow's draft. And a lot of things are going to change in this market. We're going to know where Jalen Milroe is. We're going to know where Jackson Dart ends up. We're going to know Cam Ward's situation. And seeing everything and knowing that certain players are in better situations come Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or worse situations. When we come back on Monday, 3:45 Eastern, I know you missed us on Monday this week, but on Monday, 3:45 Eastern, we're going to be jumping in to a whole new opportunities in both Underdog and DraftKings as they start rolling out their next contests. So tune in on Monday, 3:45 Eastern Standard Time. We're going to be doing another draft. We're going to be locking it in. We're going to be looking at all of the things that happened over the weekend and seeing how everything went. Whole new world.